A man stares at his phone. There is a text on the screen that simply says, "Who's Jane?" He has options. He can reply, he can lie, he can throw the phone into a river and start a new life under a different name. In the worst case, he files for divorce, splits the furniture, and unfollows everyone on social media. It is awkward, it is expensive. It involves a lawyer named Brian, who charges by the hour, and a custody dispute over a dog. But nobody dies. This is, by every historical standard, an absurdly gentle way to handle betrayal. For roughly the last 50,000 years, our ancestors had no divorce lawyers, no group chats to vent in, and no concept of consciously uncoupling. So when they discovered that a partner had strayed, they had to get creative. And by creative, I mean occasionally horrifying. So the question is this: in a world without divorce court, how did humans handle the ultimate betrayal? And why, after all this time, are we still so terrible at it? To understand the punishment, you first have to understand the panic. Because cheating, to the human brain, has never really been about feelings. It is about math. Evolutionary psychologists point to two ancient anxieties. For men, it was something cold and clinical called paternity uncertainty. A man could never be entirely sure the child he was feeding was actually his. A woman, by contrast, always knew. This little gap in certainty has caused an enormous amount of trouble across human history. For women, the threat was different. It was resource diversion. If a partner gave his attention, his food, and his protection to another family, her own children might not survive the winter. Her jealousy was not pettiness. It was a survival alarm. We tend to imagine our ancestors as romantics dancing around a fire. But in the Pleistocene, a cheating spouse was not merely a heartbreak. It was a logistical catastrophe. It could mean a child raised by a man with no genetic stake in its survival, or a mother abandoned with no food. Infidelity, back then, could quietly kill your offspring. So evolution did something brutally efficient. It made us care, desperately. It wired jealousy so deep that we still feel its echo today, every time a phone lights up, with a name we do not recognize. Now, there is a popular myth that early humans lived in a kind of carefree paradise of free love, where everyone shared everything, and nobody got jealous. This is mostly a fantasy invented by people who wanted an excuse. The reality among hunter-gatherer societies was more complicated. Some were genuinely flexible about partnerships, but flexible did not mean consequence-free. Because in a small band of 30 people, there was no escape, no anonymity, and nowhere to hide. And so they wielded the oldest weapon humans ever invented: gossip. If you betrayed your partner, you were not dragged to a court. You were simply talked about, endlessly. The whole tribe would discuss your unreliability around the fire. In some cultures, people would literally compose mocking songs about you, songs that everyone learned and everyone sang, possibly for the rest of your natural life. You became, in a word, radioactive, untrustworthy in trade, unwanted as an ally, a bad bet for anyone's daughter. And in a world where survival depended entirely on the goodwill of the group, social death was nearly as dangerous as the real thing. Nobody would hunt with you. Nobody would share their kill. You did not need a prison when you had reputation. The song did all the work, and the song never stopped. Then, about 12,000 years ago, humans did something that ruined everything. We invented property. The moment people stopped wandering and started farming, land became valuable, and land had to be inherited. Suddenly, the question, "Is this child actually mine?" was not just an emotional bruise. It was a question about who would inherit the farm. Marriage stopped being a partnership and became a contract, and the punishment for breaking that contract was written into law. This is where things get dark. In ancient Mesopotamia, the Code of Hammurabi offered a charming solution for a woman accused of infidelity. She was thrown into the river. If she floated, she was innocent. If she sank, the gods had clearly made their judgment, a legal system with a flaw in its appeals process. In ancient Rome, a law was passed that allowed a father to legally end the life of his own daughter if he caught her in the act of adultery. Not a stranger, his child. The state simply stepped aside and called it justice. And across medieval societies, a particularly grim punishment emerged: rhinotomy, the cutting off of a person's nose. Adultery was a betrayal you could not see. So they made it visible. They marked the face permanently, so that everyone forever would know exactly what you had done. You wore your crime where no one could miss it. In ancient Rome, you see, you did not get a, "we need a break" talk. You got a, "the laws of physics are about to be applied to your neck" talk. Almost every brutal punishment was aimed at women. This was not a coincidence. It was that ancient math again. Remember paternity uncertainty? Because a man could never be sure of fatherhood, societies built obsessively around controlling female behavior. A wandering husband was a scandal. A wandering wife was a threat to the entire bloodline. So the law treated them as completely different crimes. This biological anxiety, dressed up in robes and written onto stone tablets, shaped thousands of years of human law. It is why so many old legal codes read like elaborate machines for monitoring women and gently shrugging at men. The double standard was not an accident of culture. It was paternity certainty, weaponized and handed down through the generations like a family heirloom nobody wanted, but everyone kept. So here we are, 50,000 years of human history, and the through line is almost embarrassing. We have been trying to regulate love, to put rules around the single most chaotic thing our species feels, since before we could write. We tried gossip, we tried songs, we tried rivers, and laws, and knives. And it never worked, because you cannot legislate a feeling, no matter how sharp the punishment. What is fascinating is the direction we have drifted. We moved from physical punishment to emotional processing. From cutting off the nose to, "I think we should see a therapist." From the public song of shame to the private devastating silence of being left on red. We did not solve infidelity. We just made it quieter. So the next time you are dreading that awful 4-word sentence, "we need to talk," try to feel a little gratitude, because for almost all of human history, those 4 words were the good outcome. The alternative involved a river.